Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Kick Off Your Damn Heels. I am Dr. Teralyn, anxiety tamer, food shrink, and oil aficionado. You can check me out at drteralyn.com, and I have a special guest, Jessica Cline, and Jessica is a divorce therapist and coach. And the reason why I have her on is because I do marriage therapy. So doing divorce therapy and coaching is quite different, but an extremely necessary component because not all marriages work, and we would like to end them, I would guess, more amicably, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead and take a minute, Jessica, and introduce yourself and let everyone know what you do, and we'll get started with this very important conversation.
Perfect. So I'm Jessica. I am a psychotherapist, a licensed clinical social worker, if anyone really cares about that. I have been in the field for about 5 years, but 10 years working with women. And I have transitioned into working with women that are divorced or separated or have had a significant breakup, so like a long-term relationship. And I work with the Collaborative Divorce Council here in Wisconsin. And then I'm also trained as a mediator. I think that helps out a little bit in our sessions. And then some discernment counseling training as well. So really, it's from, seeing women from that decision point of like, I think that it's time for me to leave my marriage. And then, seeing them through the transformation of what that will look like. And I started in a weird way. Like I started, therapy, and I was like, I'm going to be a child. I'm going to work with children because I love playing games. And then, I worked in community mental health, so I saw everyone. But then after a while, I kept getting like people with really significant diagnoses. Like we're talking conversion disorder. So it would look like they were having a stroke. They would not have control over that. And as I was referred these people, we explored, and their marriages were incredibly unhealthy, volatile, and abusive. So I became known as a divorce therapist because people were coming to me married and they were leaving divorce. But of course,
I'm not sure if that's good or bad, right?
I know, right? When I see that, people are like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to see her then." And,
right.
and I just want to say that I, of course, also saw people that we worked on their relationship and they get married. But for some people, it was like, they're suicidal. And it's kind of like, as we explored that, well, then they are living with an abuser and they're wanting to end their life. So, it was actually a good thing that they left their spouses because they were leaving some really unhealthy marriages. So I was really close with a psychiatrist, and he would send me people, and, like, we need to have fun in therapy. And I would be like, is this a couple that you want divorced, or is this a couple you want to stay together? So I really became known as a divorce therapist. And then I relocated, and then I went through my own divorce as well. So, and it was a challenge to do that really amicably, but that's kind of my philosophy, is try to do it as collaboratively as possible. Get in as many professionals that you need to help facilitate that, because collaborative divorces, down the road, 10 years later, they always show that those people are happier that have engaged in that process.
That's interesting. I didn't know that was even a statistic. It's such a new thing. I actually did training in collaborative divorce, and mediation as well, because I thought for sure I was going to end up being a mediator, and I think often we are, right? Right. So the whole collaborative divorce is a relatively new thing, and I think most people look at it from the standpoint of attorneys. We want collaborative attorneys, but just so anyone who's listening, there's a whole team in collaborative divorce, so having a divorce coach can be a very vital part of the team, right? Just curiously, do you work with people trying to figure out if they should divorce, or is it mostly after? Okay.
Some people are in that separation area where they might have made that decision to separate, and we kind of figure out, is this a marriage that you can repair, or is this something that, you're leaving? And then for some people, we are at the point of, like I do a lot of articles about emotional abuse and, what abuse looks like in a long-term relationship. So I get a lot of people coming to me and they're like, Well, I didn't even realize I was being abused. My partner is using, substances, and I would like to divorce them, but I'm staying because I'm afraid they're going to do something. And then so here they've kind of, almost been a prisoner in their marriage, and tiptoed around this stuff. So it's never been healed. It's kind of like, I'm just going to stay in this yuckiness for fear of rocking the boat. And then we kind of process that. So, some decide, they are going to stay because that's their choice. And some decide, this isn't my best, life for me and my children.
Yeah. Interesting part, and I think we should talk about this, is the whole mental health play, I guess, or interchange that happens when you're in a relationship that you know you shouldn't be in, or that is causing you more trauma, and how you carry that trauma with you and on your body. You had mentioned conversion disorder. So can you talk about what that is for the layperson, please?
Yeah. So conversion disorder is really a trauma response. Mm-hmm. And it literally looks like someone is having a stroke. What the person that I worked with, would actually become paralyzed in my office as we processed some of these things. This was showing up in their job. They had been going to doctors for years because, they thought it was a heart problem. They thought it was a stroke. They thought it was, this and that. And then
a nervous system issue, like anything. Well, it is a nervous system issue, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of doctors aren't even aware of it, and that's not where their brain goes. And about 6 years into it, then it's kind of like, it's psychological. It seems to take that long for them to kind of pinpoint that medical stuff is not addressing it. So, those people those are extreme mental health disorders that your body is completely shutting down in that way to protect your brain from something that, a trauma that you're experiencing. And often I always say it's kind of like the roots of a tree. When we pull it up, like, we don't even realize how far they go down. So then a current marriage problem is really kind of mirroring what happened in the childhood. And so we've got trauma going on for, 40 years at that point, that's been ignored. And then that's why the body, can't respond in any way. And those people are often on, Vicodin, other things out in the brain. And so then they can't even process anything. So there's no way that they're ever going to be able to even heal from that. So then, for that particular person, I placed them in a facility that I was able to go to and do a med wash. And, the staff knew, when she was having an episode, she wasn't going to die from it. It wasn't truly a stroke. So they had to learn the discomfort of taking care of someone that had that experience. And then this person was able, within a few months, to almost have no episodes in their life. And we're talking about almost entirely throughout their day that they were having those. And really, they had a really wonderful recovery once we really were able to dig deep into what the trauma actually was, because all those medications were deadening everything. And so we couldn't touch anything at that point.
Right. And it's funny because that's kind of the message that I have with a lot of things is medications help when they help, and they hurt when they hurt. And you need to know the difference, or when it's gone too long. And when I think about people who have been on different medications, constantly changing medications, stacking medications, and increasing dosaging and things like that, like, you probably should look a little bit deeper into what's happening, so I look at things like, especially with marriages and relationships, like, accept it, change it, or leave it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't want to really explore the idea of leaving it. They want to do, I guess, maybe cross all the T's, dot all the I's, turn over every stone before they make that decision to leave something. Can you offer, and you don't know I'm going to ask you this, but can you offer a little insight as to why it's so difficult to leave a relationship that is causing you trauma?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's absolutely fear-based because, what you don't know, you don't know. So it's actually scarier to think about what the outside world is going to be like and being independent than to live with someone that is, putting you in a relationship that is creating trauma. So part of that is really, it's easier to stay. It's kind of like when you live in a really bad apartment and you want to leave, but moving is a real pain in the butt. Like, it is. So you let your lease renew, you're
stuck.
Your identity is the stuckness then. So to think about leaving is really difficult. And then when we look at time and investments, so it's the same as when you go to the grocery store and you're standing in the checkout line and your line isn't moving, but the other ones are, and you think about moving and then you're like, I put this much time into this line, I have to stay in this line. That's the same as, it's like investments. It's like relationships. So there's this feeling, I put 4 years into this relationship. I can stick it out another year because it's going to get better. Those are the things that we tell ourselves in those situations. So it's all about, it's also part of that investment theory of time in regards to that. So, of course we think that we can repair someone, in some way, or it will get better. Even though we are denying, there are those choices, accept it, ignore it, change it, leave it. And most people are living in the ignore. Acceptance, means like, I accept this as it is. Ignore means I'm like not even going to deal with it, really.
Right.
So most people,
that's when it shows up as a mental health issue, trauma, anxiety, depression, whatever. That's when it shows up there, is when you're ignoring it. Yeah,
exactly. That's a sign. Hey, you're not living your life the way you're supposed to be living it. And now you're not doing well. Depression, anxiety, all the way to the rise of conversion disorder, health issues, constant stress, no sleep, insomnia, weight gain. We're looking at, so many
sick all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we're a shell of who we were meant to be. So then, I think there's several layers of why people stay in those bad relationships.
Yeah. So this is an interesting conversation because do you usually broach the topic with your clients of, well, maybe you should leave the relationship, or do you let them get there on their own?
Well, I have two, because I'm a therapist and because I'm also a coach. It depends on how we are working together.
Right.
As a therapist, it's more of me, processing things with them and providing insight. And just kind of having them make their own decisions. And as a coach, I'm a little bit more forward, like, hey, this is going on, and these are the signs that this isn't healthy for you. What is the barrier to leaving this relationship? Because likely it's not going to change. So I'm more forward as a coach than I am as a therapist.
See, we were talking about this off air just a little bit, the difference between being a therapist and being a coach. And maybe we should segue into that for a second. Yeah. So, it's fascinating because I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going to say this, and the coach or the therapist world is going to like throw daggers at me. Sometimes being a therapist is bullshit. And, only in the fact that it's hard to see something happening and not be as forward about what's happening, to be able to just be real with somebody sometimes, instead of processing and allowing them to get there, they may never get there.
Right.
And it's the forest through the trees, right? The you're standing out here, you can see it all, but as a therapist, you might not be able to say it like that. Right.
Right.
How do you I don't know, what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of being a therapist versus a coach, especially when it comes to divorce?
So I think that some people are leaning on therapy because they want to treat depression and anxiety, and they are hoping to use their insurance benefits as well. So I think that people have this feeling like therapy is for people that really have are mentally have mental illness. They're not mentally well. So it's kind of like, I'm going to go to a therapist because I'm at my worst. And then I think the contrary to that is this feeling like I'm going to go to a coach because I want to change something in the future. Like it hasn't escalated to this point where I'm really unwell. So I want to go there. So I think that in therapy, there's this divide of like where people kind of like a road. We're at like, oh, I don't, are they called Y turn? No, that's a Y turn, but it's a road. And
a
then
fork in the road.
that's it. Yes. And then you go one way or you go the other way. So I think that there's just kind of this perception in society that that's kind of how you utilize those services is when you're really unwell, you go to the therapist. And when you just want to change your life, you go to a coach.
Right. And I do want to say like, because I do a lot of couples work, I'm just throwing that out there for anyone. I don't charge insurance for that. Because typically, right, they're not coming in because of a mental health issue. And well, they might be, but then you should be dealing with your mental health issue, but it's very fascinating because people are very quick to be like, well, I'm on an antidepressant. Can't you use that? And my point I always say is, sure, if we want to build every session around depression and I will gladly use that, and your spouse can sit next to you, while we do that, and it's very interesting because a lot of therapists will manipulate the insurance thing to be able to take insurance to work with a couple. And I am crystal clear on that, unless it is truly a mental health issue that we need to work on with the couple, which is rare, usually it's, they always classify it in communication or something like that. Like 99% of my couples come in and say the problem is communication. I don't know. Usually it's history. I don't, usually it's childhood. I don't know. Like there's a lot of stuff in there, but it's just a very interesting, I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic, and people should know, risks and benefits of using insurance, and also why using a coach would be extremely beneficial, especially in the breakup process. I had another therapist on who is known as the breakup artist, actually, and he's out of Chicago. And you guys should listen to the podcast with Josh Waters. But he's fascinating too, because he is all about, the breakup process itself, so there is definitely a need for this. And so many people are stuck right in the middle of should I or shouldn't I, and the risks and the benefits and things like that, or just being stuck all together. What is your best message for somebody who totally just feels stuck and unable to make that change? What message do you have for them?
The message I would have for someone in that place would be really to look for help in that. And oftentimes people are going to friends and family for advice, and their motive is different. So sometimes having, a therapist or a coach that can really help you process that and allow you to kind of reduce the fear to see what the outcome truly could be, so that you actually get to take, and change your life. That's kind of the message I have for that. I think that there is nothing wrong with needing support to do this, but I do think that people think that there is something wrong with that. And then because many times when people are the lever of something traumatic, they are bringing with them a ton of guilt, even if the relationship was incredibly unhealthy. And even if it gets really nasty, I see this in divorces all the time, there's still so much guilt because they made the choice to leave. And I really want those people to just get the support that they need in that process, because on the other end of it, there's a beautiful transformation that happens. And for people that don't receive the support, I often see them struggle for years, 5 years after a separation, a divorce, when they didn't get the support that they needed. They're still 5 years, holding on to this divorce and pulling it with them. Whereas people that are working with someone, 1 to 3 years, they have a completely different life, and it looks really wonderful.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking of, there's a book called The Compound Effect. Have you read it?
I don't think so.
It's a pretty good one. Talking about how little things that you do add up to something big, whether it's negative or positive, right? So if I ate a cake every single day for a year, the outcome would be really bad, versus if I walked for 20 minutes every day for a year, the outcome would be very positive. They go a little bit deeper and they talk about like responsibility in relationships. It's not really a relationship book, everyone. It's just kind of I don't know, like a life guideline book.
Mhm.
And it asks like, who has responsibility in the relationship to make the relationship work? And I usually ask my couples this, and the majority of the time, of course, I get the standard answer, 50-50, right? It's half your responsibility and half mine. And really the truth is 100%, 100%. Like,
Right.
you have to put in 100% into yourself so that you can give 100% to the relationship, right? And that's not a finger pointing thing. That's just a, did I do me 100%? You
Mhm.
know, did you do you 100%?
Right.
You know, because there's this idea, and I've thought about this a lot with couples. Everybody wants to find or point the finger at the other person. Nobody wants to be the blame, the
Mhm.
fault,
Right.
right? Like the bad guy or the bad person that ended the family, right?
Mhm.
Nobody wants that role. And I keep saying, why does there have to be that role? I don't get it. Like, why does somebody have to be bad or do something wrong or something big? You know what I mean? Like have the affair, use drugs and alcohol. Like if it's not big, this is what I get a lot too. People are like, well, they didn't really do anything. And I'm like, so you're going to wait until they do? Like
Right.
what, you know, why do
Right.
we have to wait for a
Mhm.
hurricane? You're not going to sit and wait for it to come, you know,
Right.
you're going to get out of there. Right. So what do you say to people who want to point the finger and wait for someone to be the bad guy?
Mhm.
Anything?
Well, I always say that relationships and marriages are incredibly complex.
Mhm.
Like, we like to simplify these things. And I think blame is simplified. So, there's this like, I want to make it okay. And I want to point out what someone else did. And when I'm in the collaborative process, that's a no-go. We just don't go there because that's not going to be collaborative then. It's going to be the blame game. And that's not, when they come in for the collaborative process, that's what they want. And so I have to guide them to stay in that frame of mind. So really we're working on, that's not, the blame isn't the reason, that we're here. It's because the marriage didn't work. And both people are at play in that
Mhm.
often. And really, it's not conducive to moving forward. So I really stop them in that. And we really so my theory is always reset, rebuild, and then rewrite your story. So resetting is something I do often with people is like, hey, let's, remember what you came for. Like, so
Right.
let's stop the negative thoughts or the blame or the talking badly about someone. No one is a victim in, the membership that I work with, because that just puts everyone down a notch, and we're all empowered, and we're all, no matter what someone did, we're really moving forward, and that stuff isn't going to position us to move forward. So that's kind of how I treat the blame.
All right. So let's talk about what you offer. And can you, you said you have a membership site or something that you're working on. So why don't you share what that is and let people know where they can find it. And just so you guys know, it'll all be in the show notes as well, where you can find this information to work with Jessica or to just be around like-minded people or
Yeah.
people going through something similar as you. So where can they find you?
Sure. So I last year started to do a support group online, but I had found that, with people divorcing, they have so much stuff going on in their lives that they can't necessarily be there Tuesday at such and such time for a video call all the time. So what I moved to was a support club. So it's a divorce separation support club. And, there's like monthly content that we work on stuff. We have frequently asked questions hour, and then we have like a coaching hour. So I have that option available because I really wanted to make a resource available to people that was truly affordable, that they could work it around their time because they got kids and they got all this other
Mhm.
responsibilities. And really, provide them with a supportive tribe of people that are all kind of working through the same stuff. Not everyone's story is the same, but we're all kind of on the journey together. So that is, one of my biggest things that I'm working on right now, and that's just launching right now. So you can find that at my website, www.jesscline.com/membership. You can find that in the show notes, though. Otherwise, it's
Yep.
hard to get that stuff down.
Dot slash. Yeah.
Sometimes I mistype it even myself. So, I cannot be relied on to give proper.
We won't, we'll just put it, we'll put the link right in. Then you don't have to worry about that.
And
All
then I do
right.
individual work as well. So therapy in the states that I'm licensed in. But then I do online coaching all over. I see people in France. I see people just anywhere that they roam, because I myself am a roamer. So in the summer I'll be traveling, but you still have access to me because I can do video stuff. So that's really
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. I do some discernment stuff. It's not
What
really a
can
focus.
you describe what discernment is for people, please?
Yeah, so discernment is kind of a couple that is ambivalent about where they want to go. One maybe wants to leave and one wants to repair, but we know how that works. You know, if one is set on leaving. So discernment counseling is really 5 or less sessions where you come together and you decide, you know, is this something that you can work on, or is this something that you both can agree to leave? And it really sets things up to kind of move into the collaborative process when there is an ability to have that. Otherwise, we know what happens when they don't have that process. Ambivalent person kind of gets to a point where they have to do something drastic in order to get the relationship to end. And I see a lot of infidelity in those type of dynamics. So discernment is really just you know, each person has their time to really explore the relationship and whether it can be repaired, or, you know, is it time to move towards a separation, and what would that look like? And then if both parties are willing to repair, then I would send them on to a really wonderful couples therapist that can help them repair that. And if they've decided to part ways and we can do it amicably, then I will, you know, set them up with my wonderful resources from the Collaborative Law Council. And then, you know, that's kind of what discernment looks like.
All right, cool. Okay, everyone. So we know that bad relationships can cause more mental health issues. If you're struggling with a bad relationship and you would like to learn if you should stay there, repair there, or leave there, give Jessica a call. All right. So thank you so much for coming on. All of her information are going to be in the show notes. And wait for your next episode of Kick Off Your Damn Heels.
Bye.
Bye.